Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about software engineers and being 50. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what happens to software engineers when they turn 50? I can't seem to find anyone's working. Do they quit or do they get fired or do they retire? Like, what's your take on it? Well, my take on it is that you should be able to find someone in their 50s who is still being a software developer, but I think that you should change your query. This is sort of how I try to teach. Well, I used to try to teach my mother when she's going to go on the internet and search for something, that she can't search for a very specific term. She needs to loosen it up a little bit. She needs to tweak her query so that the search engine can find relevant matches. So here are some tweaks. So change your query for software developer or software engineer to tech lead, to project manager, to senior lead engineer, senior software developer, or something like that. If that still can be a little bit hard to find. To Oh, there are so many terms. I wish I had some of my blah blah people here, or my sales people here, because they can remember all these silly terms. System architect, CTO. Like you're searching for the wrong thing. If the reason why you're not finding all that many people in their 50s who are software engineers is because usually the people who make it within this industry and are still around in their 50s, they are usually progressing up the ladder. They're doing more and more advanced work, or they're taking a bigger part in the company and the business part of IT than they are in the digital thing, in the digital solutions. And that's usually the way it goes for the software engineers who get closer and closer to retirement age. Either they go out and start their own business, or they go into management, or they go into architect type of work, or they can work in technical sales and things like that. Because usually what happens is that their one part is that they personally develop a lot of, because you may not believe this, but there's quite a lot of developers who don't want to code for the rest of their life. It's actually very normal that you evolve as a human being and you want to do better, like different things as you progress. It's not uncommon in any way. And yeah, absolutely, there are some who want to stay a coder forever, right? And the thing that happens is usually that either you get pushed out if you just focus on the coding, or at the very least it gets harder for you to stay a pure coder, or you have to switch roles at some point, because there is some people have this idea that if you just work longer and longer, you'll just get better and better, but that's not true. Your skills will level out, and the normal time it takes for you to level out as a software developer at the technical level, assuming of course that you're keeping your skills fresh, because it is a commodity that needs to stay fresh. There's an expiry date, is around say 5 to 10 years. That's roughly the amount of time that you will need before you are practically leveled out. You're not going to, unless you really push it, get all that much higher in terms of personal productivity. And when you realize, and that's usually what happens when you become a more senior experience, that your company's success and the success of your team is not down to how good you are as an individual necessarily. It is down to how good are you at presenting solutions and moving people into the right direction. Because usually when you work in a software team, you have a range of skills. You have some people who are really, really good, and some people who are mediocre, and some people are even not that good. And you need to find a way to, it's like, in my experience at the very least, it's like tweaking an engine. You have the engine you have. You can't just switch it out. You have to figure out, how can I turn all the dials so that this thing here works as well as it humanly can. And that is actually much more on the soft skills. There are absolutely technical solutions that you can use to make this happen, so the tech skills are in there. I would say that a 50-50 split is very useful for the people who are progressing up towards their career, and someone who is in their 50s or so forth, or even way before that, usually gets to that insight very quickly. At least I will just speak for myself, and I will say that something that you notice is that and this is a transition that I made myself. Now, I'm still a software developer, but when I first started as a junior developer, I really did believe that the only thing that determined how successful I was and how successful my team was how good am I at writing code? How good are we at writing code? That's the only thing that matters. But when you get to a point where you realize that you make all of these genius solutions that don't actually turn out to be all that genius, and people shoot them down and they don't really solve the problem, or they cause a bug or cause bugs and stuff like that, you get to this insight and you realize that the problem is actually more complicated than just writing the code. And then you kind of, at least in my experience, you usually make a decision there. A lot of developers make that decision. Either you continue your growth and realize that, wow, I'm going to have to work on my leadership skills and my soft skills and my architecture skills. Or you decide that, okay, I'm just going to accept the situation for what it is, and you become a code monkey. And I decided to not be a code monkey. And I did that because I realized that I really want to solve these problems, but I also understand that I can't just code away these problems. I need to learn how to deal with people as well. And when you're in your 50s and so forth, if you have made that decision, you have at that point most likely done the thing that I have been trying to do a little bit more, to the point where you are now so experienced that it's a waste for the company. You know the domains, you know how the systems work, and so forth most of the time, and you have all the people skills and the domain, the industry expertise, that it's practically, they're basically wasting money on you if you're just going to do the coding. It's much more valuable because you're going to have a bigger effect on more people if you are involved across several teams. That's what a really good architect should be. A really good architect, at least from my perspective, should be the equivalent of a general for us software developers. It should be an individual who has done the work, who knows all the stuff, and has been working for long enough that they now are so good at this industry, and they know this industry so well, that they should be included in leading several teams at the same time, because these teams could really benefit from all that wisdom. That is what happens with the developers who stay in the industry usually up until around their retirement age. So what I want you to take away from this is that no, just because you turn 50 doesn't mean that you're getting fired as a software developer, because it comes down to how valuable are you. What usually happens is that I'm not lying to you, you can get pushed out, you can get fired if you don't produce, if you don't continuously improve yourself and become more and more valuable, and you allow that experience that you're acquiring to compound, and you become this super important person in the company. Then sure, you can get fired, because I can find someone who's been working for a fraction of the time that you have been working, and they will be able to do the job, just as I like to say, the factory worker. If you are a factory worker and the only thing you care about is just doing your 9 to 5 and you never progress anywhere, well, sooner or later I'm going to be able to find a 19-year-old who will be able to do the job for half your pay, and the results is pretty much going to be the same. And the same thing can happen to you as a software developer. And the reason why you find less and less people who get to be older in the software developer role is because the people who stay in the industry usually transition to something more, to an architect, a solution architect, or a technical sales, or CTOs, or product owners, product managers. There are so many of these fluffy terms that you could look up, and I promise you, they are inventing new terms all the time. And some of these terms are like universally used in many companies, and some terms they just invented for that person in that company because they don't want this person to get fired, or they don't want to lose this person, but they need them to take a bigger responsibility because they have such domain knowledge. I've worked with people, guys, who were so important even when they were in their 50s, that the company invented a job for them because they just need that person to be around so that they can ask questions from that individual. Have a great day.